August 30, I believe, is when NARHC is giving their webinar on these changes. And that's another reason I didn't go into them today. There's a lot, but then they're talking about giving comments to the final rule. And I don't want to say something is out there yet when NARC is still developing their rebuttals and their comments. And I'm going to let those folks really summarize it. August 30th is coming up, but that there's a list.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I did not see that lab's not on the list yet.
No, because that is an act of Congress. And of course, that goes back.
Act of Congress, yes. So you can see I switched to chamomile tea. Because we're ending the day, we're going more to the soft skills. This is gonna be in 2 halves. In the first half, I'm gonna get you.
Oh,
Because she wrote it, I'm gonna try to give it, but she's like, you know how I could just stand here and I could tell you anything about college worlds, just to tell you, that's how she is about HR files and policies and all of those things. So I'm going to tee up,
I'll help.
and she says she's gonna help. Where's my clicker? Walk away from it. Oh, she owes me. Yes, let's do that. So we we're in Virginia last week, and we have dinner the night before. What time are we leaving for the clinic? 8 o'clock. Perfect. I hit the elevator button at 7:59. I am down in the lobby at 8 o'clock. She's not there. I go get a cup of coffee. She's not there. It's 5 after 8. I gotta get going. So I go to the front desk and I'm like, well, no, first of all, I went out to my car. I call her, no answer. Call her again, no answer. So I go back in and I ask the lady at the front desk, did she check out? And the lady says, well, she's not in the system. So I guess she did. Go back out, call her again, no answer. Go back in, I said, all right, now before I panic, did she at least stay here last night? Like, I didn't see her come in, she was behind me, but I think she went to the store and all of this stuff. Yeah, I checked her out about 10 minutes ago, and I'm like, I get it. She left without me. She didn't tell me.
We had separate vehicles, to be fair.
What time are we leaving the hotel? 8 o'clock. Does that not imply that we're leaving together? Right. I mean, I'm imagining her passed out in her room or month before she ever gets to the hotel. Then I get there and I'm 10 minutes late.
I owe her.
So she owes me. And then she sits right next to where I'm sitting in Mama Bear mug. Oh, traveling. They say it's all fun and games, but until somebody leaves you at the hotel and doesn't tell you that they've left. All right. Okay, what? It's not going to work anymore.
If you click on the screen on the computer itself, that will enact your.
There we go. Got it. Okay, we're going to do this in 2 halves. We're at 3:05. We will be done by 4, if not before then. The first half, we're going to talk about just some logistics, things that you can do, put on your plate, put on your quarterly rotations, your monthly rotations to get this process, your RHC compliance. Keep it in line. You got it where it needs to be, but how do you keep it that way? The worst part is when we go into these clinics, we get them ready. But if you don't have processes, whether it's monitoring your medication, whether it's logs on how to get things done, if you don't have a process to keep it that way, 6 months later, you're a mess. Helpful tips. And I'm going to give you the highlight and I'm going to make her give the detail. So these are those things that you have to keep up with because the surveyor is going to look at them at the end of the day, at the end of your section, at the end of your series, when it's time for them to come back in. If you're with compliance team or quad A, you've got a 3-year cycle. The state, who knows, when they're going to come back in. Personnel files, medical records, place in the order of the surveyor checklist. I don't know what's on the surveyor checklist. Personnel files. We know this morning that the state of Michigan, we better have an annual employee evaluation on that checklist, great. If you're with one of the surveying entities, they'll give you a checklist. If you're not, we can share with you what we have just as a template checklist, but the main points are.
So typically what they look at is at least licensing of all of your clinical staff, so your providers, DEAs, your licensing, your BLS for hire for some of your providers if they have ACLS or PALS. Making sure that that's in place. They also look at, for the NP or PA, you have one with a W-2 to show that you meet that employee requirement at the RHC level. And then also OIG searches have to be done annually for all staff at the clinic, not just your providers, which is what we typically find. You have that ongoing education and training for OSHA, HIPAA, fraud, waste, and abuse as a CMS certified facility. And then of course the emergency preparedness training we talked about earlier. And then trying to think of the categories.
I told you she knew this stuff off the top of her head. She can see that checklist in her head because she's done it so much.
Yes, and I'm slightly photographic memory, but that's a little, we won't get into my psych issues. So anyway, so then that is the baseline. That's what all surveyors are going to be looking at, are those elements. And then the accreditors also have their own checklist, and that's what we would be held to. And so the standard of conduct, confidentiality agreements, pay policy agreement, those types of things, you want to look at your specific entity of who's going to be coming into your clinic and measuring you, making sure you're able to put a check mark next to each one. If you're through the state, it's kind of the generic overarching of what are they interested in is what they're going to look at, but at least make sure your licensing, OIG, and training is up to date.
Question online, okay?
Can we get this list sent to us?
Can we get this list sent to us? We do have some templates, don't we?
Yes, I can send an HR file checklist.
And Tressa's email was on one of the earlier slides.
I'll write it down.
Okay. And when you're doing this, the streamlining the process, the staying on track part is, how are you going to remind yourself to do this? When does it have to be done? Is it quarterly? Are you going to put I like to put meetings with myself on my calendar. If it's something that's that important, I will schedule a meeting for the 2nd of September to work on this. When are you going to get it done? Make sure that it has a slot, that it has a time. And also, if it's not you, who is it? And then how are you going to remember to follow up on that? Do you have a list on things you check once a quarter? Do you have a list on things you check once a month? Because if you don't, things are going to fall through the cracks.
I would also mention in relation to HR, this goes back to our policy discussion. If you have a list in your policy of what personnel files require, that's also something the surveyor will measure you to. Even if it's over and above the licensing, OIG checks, such as those, what you have in policy can also be your own checklist that you need to make sure is in place.
Same concept for medical workers. Set your template. Make sure who's going to do self audits? How often are you going to do? What's your policy say, first of all? Who's responsible? If it's not you, do you have something on your calendar to check up to make sure that it got done? We're streamlining here. We're just helping ourselves. We're just figuring out ways to set the processes. If there's one thing that I say 5 times to 10 times a day if I'm in a clinic is, we just have to fix the process. We have to fix the process. If the processes are in place and one gets through, well, okay, maybe something was hidden or whatever. But if I find a lot of expired items, if I find a lot of issues, the process is broken. And it's not necessarily even beating the people up, because if we as managers had set the processes for those people and held them accountable to that, then it wouldn't have happened. Gone behind them, done the self audits. Policy manual. Do a crosswalk between the surveyor checklist and Appendix G. We talked about the referral process. Emergency plan, when is the next time it's gotta be reviewed? Did you put that on your calendar? Do you have a place that goes? Who's responsible for it? Is there something on your calendar to check up on that person?
I would also, the reference here is taking a pen or 491.12 and making it a checklist. Because you have to think of it from the surveyor's perspective. When they come into your clinic, they have a log of everything they have to check off that you have it mentioned or that it's listed somewhere in your clinic, or you have documented proof that it's completed. So when it comes to the emergency plan, 491.12 lays out exactly what has to be in your plan, whether you're part of the integrated plan or not, what has to be in place for an RHC facility. So take 491.12, create a checklist and say, here's where it's located in my plan. And you're able to say everything that's listed in 491.12 is present within my plan, or we at least reference why it's not listed there, that we considered it.
So for each of the things that we've talked about here, personnel files, medical records, policy manual, emergency plan, the first thing we're doing is setting a foundation of what the expectation is, either by the people that are measuring you, by the regulations. We put a process in place, and then we've set reminders to check the process. We just don't assume that it's happening, that it's just moving along, that we've actually set a meeting with ourselves, that we've set a meeting with our staff to discuss that particular item. I love that piece of talk about streamlining and just making sure that things get done. If I want something to get done, I will schedule a meeting with myself, or I'll schedule a meeting with that key person. It can be 15 minutes, but it sets the expectation that that's when that's supposed to be done, and that's when that's supposed to be caught up. And it gives a deadline. Physical plan. Love this, make them identical. I'm going to say it again. Medical supplies will go down. The less medical supplies you put in an exam room. It can be amazing. Have bare minimum in there. Watch those procedure rooms, make sure that things are locked. Those 4 things are locked. First of all, what's the 4 things? Anybody pay attention this morning? What are the 4 things that have to be locked in the patient care flow area? Drugs, sharps, PHI, chemicals. Yes, yes, it's after 3 o'clock and they still remember. Environmental rounding logs. This is setting the process. How do you stay on track? You build the process and you set milestones when you're going to check the progress of that process.
I'm going to share a quick story, Julie, if that's okay.
Yep.
Last week, I was in 2 different clinics. One, they were both very large facilities, over 20-something exam rooms. The one clinic took us quite a few hours to get through because we had to look through every cabinet, every drawer, make sure there weren't any surprises. The second clinic I got through, we had designated 2 full days to that facility, and we got through it in 1 day, 1 because I'm a round star, but 2 because I'll do my own horn, but 2 because they had done this. Every room was identical. I opened that cabinet and knew exactly what I was going to find, what I had to review. There weren't surprise supplies brought into that space. They didn't have a surplus of elements that they were trying to monitor. They hadn't combined expiration dates into the same bin, and so you pull one out and it's a different date than what was at the bottom of the bin. That just causes more work for your nurses and your medical staff that are reviewing these spaces. The more we can streamline that process, make the rooms identical, and know that whoever is coming into that space, you know you're having a cross train, you know you're having a full staff to cover. If they walk into that space and they know exactly where everything is, it makes the day go so much faster. And that's the goal, to get the surveyor in and out of your space as quickly as possible.
Exactly. Less is better when it comes to medical supplies. When it comes to things in the exam room, repeating what Tressa said. Another thing you will hear the time in your clinic. If everyone owns the room, no one owns the room. I had 2 pods. Yeah, that was in this same clinic, or the first one. 1 pod, clean. All right. Next pod, hot mess. The hot mess ended up being a process issue, but it was an urgent care side. different providers every day, different MAs every day, different folks every day. So nobody really owned those rooms because it wasn't anyone's baby, it wasn't anyone's home, it wasn't where anyone lived. It was where the urgent care, and you just had different people coming in and out of it. Probably everybody that worked in it was very conscientious, but it wasn't anyone's job at the end of the day to go in those rooms. It wasn't anyone's room. Hot mess, clean, same facility. Set the process and then set yourself a time to check to see if the process is working. Oh, wow. Same with administrative tasks.
I'll help you.
I don't know what I did. It's late in the day. Who knows what I did? Got it? No? Ooh, there we go. Administrative, I probably hit one of these buttons that said full screen or not full screen.
Our speaker, folks are not seeing the same thing, right? But that's okay, I can fix it,
She's gonna fix this.
maybe. Where's my mouse?
There you go.
Just have to reshare.
She's gonna reshare this screen. Remember when we talked about calendar reminders? Especially because it's all an administrative task at the end of the day, right? When we're talking about, once you set the process, making sure the process is working is an that's for administration. That's for the folks that are trying to keep on track, that are trying to stay on track. It's about you guys setting the processes for yourself on when you're going to revisit each issue. Delegate it, break it down, and organize your proof of compliance. Go through once a year and conduct a mock survey. Maybe you have heard from that clinic and heard from that clinic. Go to each other's clinics. You guys have seen the Febreze commercials, right? Going those one. Some of my great clinics are like, again, we have a spidey sense because we just know. I just know that that's going to be out of date. She was telling me she walked into a supply closet. And first of all, you can walk into a supply closet and just tell by looking whether or not you're going to find something. Is it organized or is it not? Is it the newest is in the back? Is it not? When I go through a bin, oh my goodness, don't mix expiration dates. If you have little packets of jelly and you're going to put some new in, rubber band the new stuff, put it in a nice Ziploc snack baggie and say, use last. There are just such simple ways that you can make your life so much easier. Because if you get a new box of something, you have one left in the old box, oh Lord, please do not take that and put it in the new box. Because you're going to go do your spot checks. And you're going to see that all three of these don't expire till December, and you've missed the one that expired last month. Make your life easier with, compliance team has a slide with the stickers. Go, it is back to school time soon here in Michigan, right? Get you some colored stickers and make a month out of each one. Yellow is January, purple is February, right the year 23, 24. Stick them on those boxes. Then you don't even have to go and look at this. You don't have to put your glasses on like I would and read the tiny print. It's time to get the purple 23s. We found all the purple 23s. There are ways to organize yourself. And if you're not that organizer, there is a whistle in your organization, in your clinic that lives for that. I am not that person, but I have friends that are. Somehow they still love me. But find that person and have them help you. Okay, it's going to make them feel good about themselves. So you don't get them on a power trip where they think they own the whole organization. But there are ways to organize Not just your proof of compliance, your whole building. Organize when you're gonna set your process, set a time to check it up, work smarter, not harder. Because we have busy lives. There we go. Because when it comes back to us at the end of it, so I'm sitting at right at the beginning of lunch. Everybody knows where I'm sitting, right? And just hearing what I hear all over the country about how much we work, about how busy we get, about how hard it is to get stuff done in a day. Because you're bombarded. You all know where I'm going with that. So as I sat down to do this next piece, you know, I'm a podcast girl, so I love to listen to podcasts. I'm listening to a lot of new Brendan Bouchard is my favorite now. A lot of new stuff, but the guy my old school guy is John Maxwell. And I'm thinking that he probably came up with these next few slides. I wish I could quote properly, but I have had this Post-it note on my keyboard tray for probably a decade of the next few slides. And I live by them. They remind me on just some simple ways to stay on track. Not quite yet. First thing you need to do is look at how much time you spend on unimportant tasks. How are you using your time during a day? When are you most effective? We're not to John Maxwell yet. For me, it's afternoon. Morning is good, evening I'm tired, but I can get a lot done between 10 and 30. That is my sweet spot. And once you know yourself, then you can pick those times of the day to do the things that you really need to get done. And this is one of my favorite sayings. There's actually a book, and so I did quote the book that it comes from. Called Eat That Frog. Mark Twain once said, eat a live frog first thing in the morning and nothing worse will happen to you the rest of the day. So sometimes when I've got just a bear of a task to do, I don't want to do it. Don't want to do it. We all have them, right? Sometimes I will get up early. I will eat the frog the first thing in the morning. Well, my day is so good after that. Because I've done the worst thing that I absolutely hate. I did it. I didn't procrastinate. I just ate the frog. Got it done. Start the day over at 2. These are just ideas, things to think about. How many times have you've had some great lofty goals, and by noon it is hell in a handbasket. It is just gone, right? If you will pick, it might not be 2. Pick a time in the day where you're going to say, no matter what happened today, I'm going to reset here. I'm going to stop. 2 o'clock is a great time because by then the morning chaos is gone. You've had your lunch, you dealt with the after lunch, and you can sit down and say, okay, now what did I, instead of just saying my day is off the rails. Because usually by 2, you're like, my day is off the rails. If you look at 2 as a point in your day for a reset, oftentimes, you can get yourself at least partially back on track and get some more productivity back in your day. Make the job smaller. This is not rocket science stuff I'm saying here. Again, the Post-it note we're into the Post-it note. Eat the frog. Start your day over at 2, or do the worst thing first, I think is what it actually said. I like the eat the frog analogy better. Break your hardest tasks into bite-sized pieces and set milestones. I know, it just seems like simple stuff. But that frog, sometimes you can't swallow it. You need to say, okay, by this week, I'm going to have this piece done. By next week, I'm going to have that piece done. And then on the 3rd week, you're going to finish it up. And if you really want to put some pressure on yourself, create an audience. Because there's nothing like, and I do this all the time. I will have it to you by. If you create the audience, you are more likely to make that deadline. Because then other people are expecting, it's not your deadline. Now she needs it, and she expects me to have it to her by Thursday. Create an audience, just make them public. Let everybody else's expect, let the people that are counting on you set your expectation and set your accountability. Block time. Whether it's the frog or whether it's just all the little tasks that you have to do, block time. Because we all know, I won't call out who at the lunch table is saying this, that you get interrupted. And sometimes you get interrupted by things that can wait. I recommend going a little even further with block time. I mean, there's this. Just say, I'm gonna spend 30 minutes, I'm gonna work on this. And I'm gonna get it done in 30, and you're racing the clock to get it done in that time, you're working to get it done. But I also think block time is effective if you communicate that block time with your staff. If they know between whatever it is, where you have a certain sign, and you give them an end time to that sign, they are more likely to go, oh, she said she would be available at 4, I'll come back at 4. But if they don't know when you're going to be available again, their problem's urgent. They can't wait till tomorrow. But if they know, I mean, whether you call it block time, whether you call it, something very creative for you, in block time will be available at, and don't make it a long time, make it reasonable, an hour, hour and a half. They'll wait, and they will absolutely leave you alone, unless it is something patient related they can't. Just a recommendation. And oh my goodness, I am so bad at this. Even as I was typing this up, I started it, it's like that squirrel, Don't interrupt yourself. When you sit down to do something that you need to get done that day, stay on your task. Schedule appointments with your staff. Have them prepare a list. She can tell you. I'm like, we have meetings every 2 weeks. Do I need to speak to her every 2 weeks? No. But I want to. But on that invite, there's a description. She just adds I add what I need, or I have a side list of what we need to talk about. If someone knows they have an appointment with you to talk about their needs, they're less likely to interrupt you. Be available, they communicate with you and not always have to wait until it's urgent to get addressed. It's the same concept. But then when you get in it, when you get in your block time, man, the gas bill's due, I need to go pick it up. Or, oh, I gotta call the teacher. Don't interrupt yourself. I can be my own worst enemy if I do that. Plan an unprocrastination day. Plan and eat the frog day. Set a day to do all those things that you've been putting off. Wear some comfy clothes, get a Starbucks on the way to work, and eat the frog. I want to hear from you guys. Anything that has worked for you? What's worked? Is there anything in your clinic that's been working for you? I just threw out some ideas that I've had on my desk for a decade. And when I remember to employ them, they really work well for me. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. It is 3:31. I'm going to give this back to Jill. It's been a long day. I hope this has been beneficial to you. You know how to find us. Jill is a fantastic resource, which I'm going to give over to you now.